My 2005 E320 CDI is by far the most fuel efficient car that I own, and because it's also powerful and very comfortable, it's been my daily driver for the last 6 months now, and I do plan on making a lot more videos with this car. But I have a confession to make, and that is I've been cheating on the CDI a lot, and not with some fancy German car, but with a bare bones Chevy with a manual transmission, a big old V8, and it still gets 30 mpg highway. It also lays down some pretty decent rubber, and now we have to get out of this forest preserve. Yep, I bought a Chevy Corvette. I mean, what gave it away? Now, some of you Euro car guys out there may be a little bit baffled, and you might be saying to yourself, it's just a Chevy, or the interior's cheap and rattly. Well, you're probably not saying it in that accent, but you'd be right. It is just a Chevy, and the interior is pretty cheap, and it's very, very rattly. Check this out. Oh, Jesus. But I think if you were to set aside the fact that it is a Chevy just for a minute and look at performance data, look at reliability, value, and even fuel economy, you'd come to realize that the C5 Corvette is one of the best sports car bargains out there. And this is actually my 4th Corvette. I've had 2 C3s, a totally mint C4, and now this 1999 C5. And one thing that I've always loved about Corvette is the simplicity of the chassis codes or chassis numbers. They didn't mess around with a bunch of different letters and numbers that don't necessarily go in sequence as the generations progress. Nope, they just stole the C from Corvette, and for the first generation, they added a 1. The next generation came out, they added a 2. We're now anticipating the C8 Corvette, and nothing has changed, and I like that. Now, I bought this Corvette sight unseen, which is always scary, but I think it was a fantastic deal as it was the cheapest 6-speed manual C5 Corvette with sports seats and in somewhat of a rare color called magnetic red. But I'll admit, this was totally an impulse buy because I keep on searching for cars on Autotempest.com. And since Autotempest searches all of the major automotive marketplaces like Carvana, Cars.com, Car Gurus, and eBay, where I found this Corvette, it makes finding cars just too easy. Everything is well organized on one page, staring you in the face, just daring you to go buy something. They've even done away with the impulse limiting 200-mile search radius on Craigslist, and they just give you links to nationwide Craigslist results, so you don't have to go city by city searching all day like I used to do. I also use Autotempest to compare asking prices and research pricing trends, so if you're fiending to go out and buy a new car, or you just want to get a feel for the market, check out Autotempest.com or click on the link in the video description box down below. And a big thanks to Autotempest for sponsoring this video. So in a minute, we're going to go for a ride in the Corvette, and I'm going to talk to you guys about why I think the C5 is just such an amazing bargain and why all of you guys should just go out and buy one. And I'll be splicing in a few clips like this. Because the Corvette just sounds amazing. Check this out. But first, let me show you guys the condition of the C5 Corvette, and keep in mind, I've owned this car for about the last 2 months, and I haven't even washed it because I wanted to reveal this car to you in the exact same condition that I bought it in, and since this was such an impulse, I wasn't even really planning on having this car. But as you guys are gonna see, this car cosmetically is in pretty rough shape, but I have a feeling that it is gonna clean up really nicely. Oh, the color is amazing, guys. Hang on. Let's take the tape off. Now, I haven't even lifted the Corvette, and in the last couple thousand miles or so that I've driven this, it hasn't given me any reason to. This thing mechanically seems to be in excellent condition. The transmission shifts perfectly. It had a clutch done about 10,000 miles ago. The engine doesn't smoke. It doesn't make any weird noises. You can let go of the steering wheel at 120 miles an hour and it drives perfectly straight. And the AC is ice cold. But as you guys are probably starting to realize, it is a little bit bit cosmetically challenged. We have basically all of the paint on the top of both mirrors has completely faded away to nothing. And also they put on some chrome C5 wheels. These are aftermarket wheels, and the chrome is just pitted beyond repair. So there's really not much you can do about this except replace them. And then the tires are dry rotted as well. Now, something that you can see right away in person, and I hope it translates well on camera, is just how faded this rear hatch is. It's basically a completely different color than the rest of the car, but I think this is really prime for an awesome paint correction, which we will be doing. We'll be completely paint correcting this car and ceramic coating this car in a future video. So outside of what you see, it has some very, very common C5 issues. Most notably, the oil pressure sensor is bad, so it is completely pegged and maxed out. So this has perfectly good oil pressure. Well, I guess I don't know for sure, but in the last 2,000 miles, it hasn't locked up. And all these C5s, the oil pressure switch goes bad, and you replace it, and it works again for another 10 years or so. Also, it has one bad headlight motor, so it does go up and down most of the time, but from the inside of the car, you can really hear the gears grinding. And they just sell a gear repair kit, very easy to do on these. And outside of that, we just have some typical interior wear, but in reality, if you guys can look past how dirty the interior is, it's in really, really good condition. So the bulk of the issues with the interior have to do with this bolster right here. I mean, it's a GM, 137,000 miles. It's very, very dirty, but if you just look past that, the door panels are both in excellent, excellent condition. The dash on this car looks awesome. It's not worn out, it's not cracked. The steering wheel is in great shape. And even all of the white lettering on the buttons in this car, which typically wear out on a GM product of this era, are in perfect shape. So if I recovered the seat, the passenger one is in really good shape, by the way. If I recovered the driver's side seat, replaced the foam, this thing would be in awesome condition. Oh, and something else wrong with this Corvette, super common on all these C5s, is the seat. It moves back and forth, so does the passenger side, but something else that's great about C5 Corvette ownership is just how cheap the parts are to buy. So all that's wrong with this seat are these bushings have worn out. They sell kind of a kit to replace the bushings in the seat frame. I think that was like 30 bucks. Then we have our factory AC Delco oil pressure switch that I think was like 25 bucks. The special socket to do it was about 12. And then we have our new gear for the headlight motor. And then this guy, I think she was about 6 bucks or so. It just goes right in here. So let's just start fixing up this Corvette right now. One of the hardest things we're gonna do because I'm doing it with one hand. Hang on. There you go. Done. Looks so much better already. So I bought my Corvette private party and I paid $8,500 for this car, which is coincidentally exactly what I paid for my 2009 C63 AMG, which I bought within the same 12-hour span of time of buying this Corvette. I rented a one-way car with a friend. We drove down to Indiana, bought the Corvette, then drove to Kentucky, bought the C63, and then I drove the AMG, and my buddy drove this all the way back to Chicago, and it was flawless. And it got over 30 miles per gallon on the highway. I came home, checked the tire pressure. That was at like 23. So it probably would have done, 32, something like that, easy on the highway. The 6-speed manual and the fact that it's just so aerodynamic really makes this car somewhat of an economy car. All right, guys, I am absolutely dying to see how this paint will look after a little bit of polishing. Been waiting 2 months for this. So I'm just gonna do this little section. I already cleaned it off. Got the little clay mitt going on to take out all the impurities, which I'm sure there are a ton. Oh, it's like sandpaper everywhere else but here. This is gonna be so cool, guys. I hope you stay tuned for the next episode on the Corvette. We're gonna be paint correcting the whole thing. This is gonna be one of the most satisfying videos I think I'm gonna make. But let's do our little tape line here. And then I'll be using a wool pad on the Rupes Bigfoot polisher. We have a little bit of a coarse compound here, and let's just do this section here. Oh my gosh, I love this paint. Oh, the color is amazing, guys. Hang on, let's take the tape off. This is gonna be so cool. All right, guys, I hope you can see this. Here is our tape line, and it is like a completely different color. Oh man, I hope this comes up on camera. But I went a little bit over the tape line, so some of this looks good too, but you can tell right where the tape was over was what it looked like before, just super dull and super faded. And now this is nice and sparkly clean, and the clear coat is in great condition. And this magnetic red has kind of a little metallic flake to it, so I cannot wait to completely polish out this entire car. And we're gonna ceramic coat it and get the new wheels on, which I have right now. You know, I'm just gonna show you the new wheels, hang on. And here they are, the very simple, the very clean C6 Corvette 5-spoke wheels. Of course, I had to get them in chrome. I love chrome wheels on some American cars. And I love 5-spoke wheels too, if you guys haven't noticed, with the diesel and my turbo Trans Am. So these wheels came from OE Wheels. I've been getting wheels and tires from these guys for over a decade. I've had 2 different sets on my 9-second turbo Trans Am, and they are fantastic replica wheels, and they have wheels for all sorts of different makes and models. So I'll definitely leave their link down below. But this is a complete wheel tire package with the TPC sensors as well. So once we fix the oil pressure sensor and we program these sensors into the car, we're not going to have any warning lights on the dash of the C5 at all. So I am very, very excited. These wheels are super high quality and insanely affordable. So I'll be going over these a little bit more in the next video when we bolt them on after we completely correct the paint. But for now, let's go for a ride and talk about why the C5 Corvette is one of the best sports car bargains on the market and how it compares to some other cars of its era. Jesus, this is the loudest target top. They really are rattly, guys. I'm gonna give you all of that with the target top. Oh my, I'm gonna have to take this thing off. Here's a good bump, check this out. Oh, Jesus. So of course, as soon as I take the target top off, it starts to rain. But at least it's not rattling all over the place, so I think as long as I keep moving, we'll be okay. Guys, so just to recap the C5 Corvette, in case you're not too familiar, this car was made from 97 to 04. The base model, the normal C5 non-Z06 cars came with roughly 350 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. A little bit less in the earlier years, a little bit more in the later years, but that's basically correct. They had a 346 cubic inch LS1 engine, and you could get a T56 manual 6-speed or a 4-speed 4L60E automatic. Not the best trans in the world. Now, these cars were roughly rated in like the low 13-second quarter-mile range, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. But a lot of this car is just very underrated. So I had an 01, I still have an 01 Trans Am 6-speed, same engine, same trans, like 25 less horsepower, and it weighs roughly 400 pounds more. And back when I got it like 16 years ago, I was running 13.1 stock all day, and there were a lot of guys with these base model type C5s that were running 12s right from the factory with the factory tires and everything. So you're basically getting a manual transmission, 2-seater sports car that weighs about 3,200 pounds, that runs a 12-second quarter mile, that has the transmission mounted in the rear to give it an even 50-50 weight distribution. And that now you can buy for roughly $10,000, give or take. Some of them are more towards 8, some of them are 12. But basically for about 10 grand, you can pick yourself up even a 6-speed manual C5 Corvette, and they last forever. It's a fiberglass body, it's a full frame vehicle, and the engine, as you guys know, is swapped into everything. And back then, it was used in everything as well. All the trucks and all the vans, all used an LS-based engine, which is what this is. And there's many reasons for this. They're light, they're compact, they're very powerful, they're very easy to modify, they're very simple to work on, they're very cheap to work on, they're very powerful. Did I already say that one? And the mods for them are, there's just like a plethora of things you could do to the LS engine. The aftermarket is insane. So overall, I think the LS engine will go down It's probably one of the top 10 engines ever made all around, and for very, very good reason. So we live in this day and age where you're LS swapping everything, and I think it's super cool. But you see a lot of guys that are trying to build a car that's very track focused. Maybe it's a road course car, a drifting car, and they go through a lot of trouble to swap an LS and sometimes a 6-speed T56 transmission. And I think that's great. There's a lot of cool Japanese cars out there with these swaps, and it's awesome to see them on the track. But just from a strictly financial standpoint, if you wanted to build a track car, starting with a cheap C5 is probably the cheapest route you can go, the best route you can go. You're getting an insanely reliable factory setup for about $10,000 that you can do basically anything to and find parts for at the drop of a dime. And most all local parts stores carry stuff for these cars. It's not bad with the target top off. You don't really hear much. I got some adjustments to make though on these latches because you can get these to quiet down. So I think if you just want to build a track weapon, the C5 Corvette is the way to go. And if you want to spend just a few grand more, like roughly 4 or 5 grand more, you can get the Z06 version that made it all the way up to 405 horsepower. They weighed like 3,050 pounds. They were hardtop cars. They all came with the same manual transmission. They are fantastic. Even to today's standards, they hold up very well at the track. Now, something else that's huge with the Corvettes is the compatibility between all the years. So this has the base suspension, which actually it rides really nice and handles really nice, but you can get a Z51 suspension package. There was magnetic ride. Then you had the Z06 suspension package. And what's cool is all this stuff swaps between the cars for the most part. So you can put a Z06 suspension on this car. You can even swap parts from the C6 cars, the later generation Corvettes, into the C5. And this is all parts bin stuff that just bolts up directly and you're done. So no custom modifications or anything. I think most of you guys know how well these engines take to modifications. You can slap a cam in here, maybe do something with the heads, port the heads, a different intake, and you could be at roughly almost 500 wheel horsepower, naturally aspirated, and drive the thing forever and still have it be super reliable with hydraulic roller lifters and all that good stuff. So at 137,000 miles, this thing is just barely broken in, and there are C5s out there over 300,000 miles, no problem whatsoever. So comparing this with other cars is pretty difficult because there's really just nothing that compares when you factor in value. So you could have bought a really high-end European car, like an exotic car from back in the day, for 3 or 4 times the cost, 10 times more to fix it. You'd have a little bit more leather in the interior if you're into that kind of stuff. But that's not really a good comparison with this car. They started at $38,000 roughly back in the 90s, in 97, when the C5 came out. And there really wasn't any other 2-seater sports car at the time. I mean, you had your Viper, which was obviously much more money. The Supra is just a very expensive car today. That kind of competed with the Corvette. But something that I find really interesting is the fuel economy, and this is what makes this car such a great daily driverable car if you don't live in an area that has snow. These cars were rated at 29 mpg on the highway with the manual. And just to put that into perspective, the same year Miata, 140 horsepower, hang on, I had to pass that truck. 140 horsepower 4-banger was rated at 29 mpg, which is just pathetic. Those cars weigh like 2,000 pounds as well. So this LS engine is also very, very efficient. The fact that it's aerodynamic, it weighs about 3,200 pounds, body's made of fiberglass, and the gearing of the transmission, you're at like 1,700 RPM at like 80 miles an hour, so it's just barely even being used. All that combined lends itself to a car that gets fantastic fuel economy. It's somewhat of an economy sports car, and with the air pressure in the tires up to 35 psi roughly where it's supposed to be, it's not uncommon to see 31, 32 mpg on a Corvette, on a 350 horsepower huge V8 Corvette. I mean, you really cannot beat that. but unfortunately I have to pull into this parking lot and put my target top on because it is really starting to come down. With that being said, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know also in the comments section if you'd like to see me do kind of an economy build as I pull up literally next to a Tesla. I want to see if I can get the Corvette to get 40 mpg on the highway. So at the time, the Prius, the same era Prius, I think came out in like 2000 or whatever, those cars got about 40 mpg on the highway. And I think if I changed out the 342 gear for a 273, I slam the suspension, make it more aerodynamic, and I mess around with the tune, I can tune my own GM cars. I can run what's called a lean burn situation, where when you're cruising on the highway, it's running pretty lean. We'll have to monitor EGTs and whatnot, but I think I can get this thing to get 40 mpg. I'm excited about it. I know it's kind of a weird concept for a Corvette, but let me know in the comment section what you guys would think about a fuel economy Corvette build. Anyway, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe if you're new, and most importantly, have an awesome day, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.